Argentina. Making it the second largest country in South America and also the eighth largest country in the world. Argentina is presently located on the southernmost tip of the continent, bordering Chile on its west side and the Atlantic Ocean on the east. The country's capital, Buenos Aires, currently has one-third of the entire population living in the city and 53.9% of the land being occupied for agriculture.
Argentina is considered to have a republic government system, as well as a mixed economic system. They input private freedom from market economy aspects and economic planning from controlled economy aspects. Also, as many countries do, Argentina has gone through endless encounters with economic crisis. In the 1950s, they experienced a peak of 40% inflation, and just recently, they have reached that height as well. So what goods do Argentina produce?
Well, they happen to be one of the world's largest producers of wool and wine, as well as being a main exporter of wheat and soybean. During the time between 2005 and 2006, they became the world's leading exporter in soybean meals.
So, how do they produce these things?
Mainly through agriculture, of course due to their well-defined fertile land and rich resources.
And lastly, who do they produce this for?
Argentina mainly exports to countries such as Brazil, China, and the United States, Chile, and India.
Starting in 1992, Argentina's currency value was tied to the US dollar, meaning their 1 Argentina peso was equivalent to the US $1. However, after the year of 2001, the chain was broken and Argentina's peso value continued to drop through inflation.
It was interesting to see how that affected trade, since they happened to be top producers and exporters in certain aspects. That formulated the question of how did the devaluation of the Argentine peso impact its imports and exports with other countries? The way we intend to answer this question is through breaking it down briefly into why they started to break off from the US dollar parity, and where they ended up in terms of trade after it happened.
To start off and give background, something very significant that happened in Argentina was their economic crisis around the 1980s. Inflation was rising and they needed a way to tame it and keep it settled. The plan was to peg the Argentina peso to the US dollar. This was good for a while, however, the peso became overvalued, in which, according to economicshelp.com, eventually led to a deficit in more import than exports. Starting 2002, it caused Argentina to fix the problem by devaluing the peso and unpegging it from US dollar.
So, how does this relate to imports and exports exactly? Well, after the unpegging from the US dollar and the value of the Argentine peso had initially fell, afterwards it just kept falling. This soon affected Argentina's trade with other countries.
Firstly, the effects stated by CEPR.net exclaimed that exports were actually boosted when Argentina's value of the peso went down, but that did not necessarily help imports. Although many were able to buy from Argentina, the low value of their dollar was not satisfactory for Argentina themselves, which caused exports to grow and imports to drop.
A benefit, however, is, according to bdiplin.wordpress.com, the devaluation of the peso in 2002 actually helped agriculture export profits and encouraged investment from other countries. Now, looking at Argentina overall, they seem to have a balance between gaining benefits from a devaluation of their peso, but having less competitiveness in the trading line because of low values. Looking at the overall research and answer to the question, how did the devaluation of the Argentine peso impact its imports and exports with other countries, the answer seems to be semi-satisfactory. We are able to get a standard and general answer, but it did not meet the level of full and proper understanding as we had hoped to get.
The limitations in the investigation was the actual research on the topic and the lack of reliable resources to answer the actual question. It seemed as though we had very good research and many reliable resources for much of the background information, but it was difficult to find and formulate a proper answer to our actual question due to either lack of reliability or lack of websites actually having the answers to our questions. Some questions that formulated along the way were: how did the value of Argentina's money not only affect Argentina itself, but how did it affect the other countries as well? How did they benefit or not benefit? And a question we were not able to answer is: why does Argentina's inflation keep changing at an inconstant rate?
That concludes Argentina. The effect of the devalued peso on its imports and exports.